International Championships. We're back for one more match before we figure out our second finalist to make it all the way to Championship Sunday.
It's so exciting when you start to really whittle down that competition, and we've already got Alberto and Lara, but now we're going to find out if it's going to be either Yuya Tada or Gavin Michaels facing him in that finals. We've heard from Alberto that he'd much rather face Yuya at this point in time. Doesn't know how the matchup's going, but he knows against Gavin it will be a tough mountain to climb.
Yeah, and I think it attacks in that wild charge as well as the Volt Switch. Plus, it also has the grass Terra typing. So I feel like it's going to be a really great Pokemon to have in this matchup if Gavin is expecting to see the Dondozo and Tatsugiri on the other side.
Well, they might be hiding in the back at the minute. It's the Palafin and the Amoonguss out on the field here for Gavin. This does allow him the utility to go for some redirection, switch out the Palafin, and be able to, you know, get that zero to hero transformation going down here in the top 4 at Oceania.
Yeah, you can actually get a little bit of a sneak peek. I think Gavin is really set up for an end game here. But it depends on what Yuya Tada has also brought to this matchup. I think that Gavin is in a really nice position, seeing the Arcanine in front of him right away. He has been able to soak up that Intimidate drop there onto the Palafin, and he's going to be able to switch it back out in favor of this Pelipper just to get things rolling here with the Rain to really set that Palafin up for success.
Yep, that's definitely the endgame strategy. Get the Rain on the field so when Palafin comes back in as a transformed hero, it's going to be able to reap the benefits of the Rain on the field. It does, of course, also allow the Pelipper with the Hydro Pumps, as long as it can connect them, of course, to get the boost on those Water-type moves as well. And I think this is a great play by Yuya, you know, realizing there's a lot of water pressure on the field. Let's Terra into a Grass-type to be able to take those moves much better.
Oh, look at that, though. Pelipper, that's going to be a lot of damage coming its way, bringing it all the way down to its Focus Sash. So while it will be able to hang on for this moment, the Flare Blitz follow-up here from the Arcanine is going to take it right out.
Yeah, Pelipper's gone. I mean, I think the Amoonguss was breathing a sigh of relief. That Flare Blitz wasn't coming towards its direction. Again, nice to have the Rain on there to negate some of the damage that fire moves can do. Amoonguss going for the Spore into the opposing Pokemon that has gone for the Grass Terra. So now the Flutter Mane not falling victim to that. A really nice Terra from Yuya there.
Yeah, super heads-up play, just being able to kind of anticipate maybe something like that, but also providing a little bit of stability against an attack from that Palafin if that was going to be going its way as well. But we can see the Palafin's coming back out onto the field, and with its zero-to-hero transformation, is ready to really be that hero that Gavin needs right now.
Exactly, you know, the Wave Crash looking very tempting into the Arcanine, and even said, you know, going down into that opposing Flutter Mane, it, you know, isn't necessarily the most defensive of Pokemon. You know, you can hit it on the special side, but with the physical side that comes out from the Palafin, then that is something the Flutter Mane's going to have to worry about, even if it is Grass type right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's still going to be something that Gavin's going to play around a little bit, doesn't want to take too much damage here. So the Protect will be very well received when you do have that Moonblast heading in its direction.
Yes, exactly. You can see as well the Will-O-Wisp was coming down into the Palafin, so a really nice protective from Gavin, not taking any damage and leaving Yuya a little bit stuck for turns here. The Amoonguss can fire up a Pollen Puff and be like, hey, I know you're a Grass type. I've got you, though. I've got this Pollen type, but that is going to be able to just do a little bit of damage.
Yeah, and the Pollen Puff is going to help out even in future turns when you do have the ability to heal up one of your allies.
Yes.
And just make sure that you can sustain through a potential Dondozo Tatsugiri that may be in the back. But as of right now, we've only seen this Arcanine and this Flutter Mane here from Yuya, and it's going to continue to be that way.
And every little bit of damage will put that Flutter Mane into a more vulnerable position from something like a Wave Crash coming out from the Palafin. But Yuya just playing defensively, going for a double protect here as the Palafin was indeed going for the Jet Punch into that Arcanine, actually deciding to change up the targets, now leaving the Amoonguss to go for a Pollen Puff into its friend here, but not really needed.
No, not at the moment, but I love that Yuya is going to start to try to draw out some of these turns of Rain. You know, Pelipper being able to set that, but it did get knocked out, so there's no way to reset that now.
Exactly, and that's one thing that Gavin has to keep an eye on as well, those Rain turns, because you want to reap the benefits of them before they go. But we're going to see a switch coming out here. It's going to be the Arcanine retreating, and instead we will be joined by that Dondozo.
Yeah, Dondozo hitting the field, and we're also going to see a terrestrialization here. But funny enough, I did see what Gavin was picking for that second move, and maybe that's why I'm scratching my head just a little bit at the moment. But we will see Gavin terrestrialize this Palafin as well, and will this be enough damage to really get the ball rolling?
Well, let's check it out. Here's the Jet Punch in the Rain coming from this terrestrialized Palafin. It's enough to get the knockout on that opposing Flutter Mane, so you don't have to worry about the powerhouse that is on the opposing side of the field. And it's nice to get a nice clean KO.
Yeah, very nice coverage there as well, because now that you've removed the Flutter Mane from the field, doesn't matter if you targeted into that before, the Spore is going to go right into that Dondozo, making it way more manageable.
Exactly, really nice to catch the Dondozo on the switch in here. Of course, potentially if there'd been a switch on that side, you might have been wanting to go for the Spore there, but
Yeah,
high
exactly.
risk and sometimes high reward, right?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, now that we see the Dragonite as well, we've got confirmation here that Tatsukiri actually didn't come to this game.
No.
It's not here. It's just Dondozo on its own.
Yeah, little fish on the bench, but big fish here to play. Once it wakes up from its nap, it's forced to take right now. We have got the Dragonite on the field, and of course, you know, Dragonite can still apply a lot of pressure. Something like, you know, an extreme speed would be able to do a lot to Palafin, the aerial ace to the opposing Amoonguss, but there's no terror available on Yuya's side anymore. First of all, however, the Palafin is going to go for the wave crash into that opposing Dragonite. We'll be breaking the multi-scale ability on it, so it's going to be a lot more vulnerable, and aerial ace just gets a solid Oko onto that Amoonguss.
Yeah, that Amoonguss was already putting in so much work, being able to get that little bit of chip there onto that Terra Grass Flutter Mane, but also, of course, putting this Dondozo to sleep. Now we found out that, yeah, Tatsugiri's not in the back, but it can still put on the pressure there with just some attacks. But Gavin has saved the ace in the hole in the back, and that is going to be that Iron Hands.
Iron Hands is a great Pokemon choice here for Gavin to have brought because, like you mentioned, Wild Charge is something that can apply a lot of pressure to that opposing Dondozo. It's asleep. It can't have Commander activated because Tatsugiri is not on this team of 4 at present, and there's really not a lot that can be done. It can't Terror at this point. The Wild Charge is going to hurt.
Yeah, and even with the Dragonite as well, I mean, you mentioned that the multi-scale has already been broken, so Iron Hands really has a feast in front of it to be able to get these knockouts here for Gavin.
And the Dragonite's Choice Band as well, so you know it can't go for a Protect. Palafin can go for a Wave Crash. Yes, the rain has gone, but so has the multi-scale ability, so this is still going to hurt really hard and be enough for that clean KO.
There we go. One more Pokemon out of the way here, and Gavin is going to be able to try to chunk down this Dondozo as well, as it's going to take a turn of sleep here, but then the Iron Hands does get a chance to attack.
Yeah, exactly. It's going for that Wild Charge powerfully into the Dondozo. You can still see the natural bulk of Dondozo, though, able to take that. And, of course, Iron Hand's going to have to take a little bit of recoil. But considering it's asleep, you know, it's going to have to wake up pretty soon. The one thing with Dondozo, though, is it is naturally a slow Pokemon. We often see it go a little bit speedier once it gets the 2+ speed boost you get from Commander. But that's not going to happen here. There's nothing... Arcanine does not want to go into the mouth of the big fish. You know, that's not how types work. Fire type, avoid water.
For sure. At least when Arcanine is coming in here, it does have full HP, and so it does have a little bit more staying power. But in the face of this Palafin with a priority Jet Punch, that's going to be really tough, I think, to get through. And Yuya Tada going to throw in the towel here for game number 1, and Gavin Michaels goes up a game.
Yeah, fantastic to see such a commanding victory there from Gavin. Once again, the Palafin just applying so much pressure, getting it set up nice and early, and the key thing I want to comment on is bringing that Pelipper in. Yes, it literally came in, went down to the double up from Yuya's side, but the key thing was that ability, and that's why abilities are such a pivotal key of building Pokemon and their cores, because setting up that Drizzle, being able to make sure that the rain was on the field to help out when it came back in, and not only to help out the Palafin, but particularly as there was an Arcanine on the opposing side, and making sure that Amoonguss had a little bit of breathing room in the face of the Fire-type moves, I think was a really nice synergy strategy from Gavin.
Absolutely. I think that Gavin was able to make use of every single opportunity afforded to him, and this is going to be a tough matchup for Yuya to navigate here. You can see how much of a commanding control he really did have over some of his other sets during yesterday and today, and in this situation, Yuya seems to struggle at the moment to really find the right opportunity to bring in what he needs to be able to win this game.
Exactly, and I think one thing that you did in terms of taking a risk was bringing that Dondozo without the Tatsugiri. Often we see Tatsugiri coming out on its own, sometimes leaving Dondozo at home, and it's because Tatsugiri has, you know, a really nice high special attack. It's able to then deal, you know, some good damage from that front with something like a Draco Meteor or even Muddy Water, or it also has that speed utility, you know, could go for Icy Winds and things like that. But it's not often we see Dondozo coming on its own. I think it's often the kind of Pokemon that when you lead it out, you, as the opponent, will often assume, hey, Tatsugiri's in the back and you have to play around that. So it's a really nice bluff, but it just didn't work out for Yuya. We've got Flutter Mane and Arcanine coming out for the front, though, and once again, Palafin and Amoonguss.
Yeah, so a little bit of a run back of the leads that we saw in game number 1. But it really is about that turn 1 adjustment, whether or not we see the same thing, or if we're going to see a little bit of a switch up here. And it kind of seems like we might. Look, Gavin's making a hard call right here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a reason for Gavin not to switch out and bring that Pelipper in, just to be able to reset a little bit of the rain. And also just, you want to get Palafin to go through its transformation, right? So the sooner you get it out, the better. Here's Pelipper rejoining the field. Rain's going to be activated, and that's going to be able to do exactly what we saw it do in Game 1 and provide support for Palafin when it rejoins the field.
Absolutely. But we are going to see a terrestrialization on the other side as well, as Yuya is going to get the ball rolling here. It's the Fluttermane once again getting that grass Terra type, and might be a little sad depending on whether or not Gavin can hit the mark there with what the Amoonguss selected.
Yeah, we'll have to be able to take a look. We've got the Shadow Ball coming out first of all, though. That's going to go down onto the Amoonguss, maybe identifying, hey, it is a little bit of a threat. I can't ignore this Amoonguss on the field with the Flare Blitz being followed up here. So the double target, not enough to get the KO, thanks to the Pelipper coming in, giving that rain support to reduce the offensive pressure of Fire-type moves. Amoonguss gets a little bit of a snack as well for its troubles as it readies up for what it wants to do.
Yep, there's going to be a Pollen Puff now heading that Grass Terra Fluttermane's way, and that's still going to be able to do a significant chunk of damage there. And Amoonguss still has that Regenerator ability, so while it did take some damage coming in from this turn, well, Pelipper is still a lot on the field with that Focus Sash intact, and this Amoonguss could make a swap here in order to get some of that healing back.
That's exactly what we're seeing here. Amoonguss wants to use his Regenerator ability and let Iron Hands come into the fray as well. I mean, this is where Gavin really has put you on the back foot, because, you know, all of these moves and calls that Gavin are making are fantastic. Going for the Protectable on Pelipper, wanting to keep it on the field for a little bit longer. Doesn't want to fall victim to the extreme speed that would break that Focus Sash on the Pelipper as well, leaving it a little bit more vulnerable. And in fact, we actually see the double up that was going into that Pelipper, so great play. Iron Hand gets in for absolutely free.
Yeah, this is really great too, because Yuya does have the Arcanine on the field now, so there's no Intimidate drop onto this Iron Hands. It can really start to do some devastating damage here as we take a look at the next turn.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I really like the way Amoonguss switched out, making sure that it's in the back, it can come back and do some more Pollen Puffs later, but also apply that Spore pressure for something like the Dondozo in the back. Fake Out can come out from the Iron Hands here, just going to stop the now Grass Fluttermane from doing anything. It's going to have to take a Will-O-Wisp for its troubles, though, however. That's going to certainly mean that it's not going to be as effective with those wild charges against a potential Dondozo in the back. But my eyes are on this Pelipper. It's going for the Tailwind, boosting the speed up now, and really giving Gavin a lot of momentum in this match.
Yeah, especially when the Pelipper is still sitting at such a nice HP level at full Focus Sash intact. You can start to go for a little bit more damage instead after you have had that setup. And at this point, Iron Hands is really there for the bulk. It's really there to be able to withstand through some of the pressure that Yuya might have with the special attackers in the back, and we're just going to see a switch here.
Yeah, I like the Iron Hand switching out here. You know, it's not going to be able to deal a lot of damage, and you can reset that Fake Out for later in the game and let Palafin take to the field. It's time to shine, as it were. It can apply a lot of pressure to the Arcanine coming forward, but Arcanine's actually getting out of there as well. The Intimidate will be so beneficial going forward to that physical attacker of the Palafin, and let's bring the Dragonite into action.
Yeah, I'm going to protect here coming in from the Fluttermane is just going to make sure that it is able to stay on the field just a little bit longer, especially because Pelipper was headed in its direction with a Hurricane. But now, how do these speeds interact, right? We've got the Palafin as well as the Dragonite that have access to these priority attacks.
That's really true. You know, the Tailwind's up. That's really, really helpful. The key thing for me with the Pelipper, though, is it's still got its Focus Sash intact. Rain is going to be ticking away at this point, so you might want to switch it out to preserve it so that it can reset that Rain later on. While Palafin has that momentum, you know, it does have the priority of Jet Punch that I think might be enough to be able to pick up a KO against this Fluttermane at this range, even if it's not going to be super effective. You've got the Rain up. You still have access to your Terror as well, so if you wanted that extra damage, you could go for it, or you could deal some damage into that opposing Dragonite like we saw previously, but it's going to be the extreme speed.
Yeah, so extreme speed, it will be that Dragonite's attack of choice moving forward with the Choice Band, and just going to be a nice KO there onto the Fluttermane on Yuya Tada's side. So already starting to count down the Pokemon that are left in this game, as this Dragonite now is going to have to take this Hurricane.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take the Hurricane. Going to be able to take it really well. Obviously, Multiscale was still intact, but it's not anymore, so it's going to be a little bit more vulnerable. The Rain has stopped on the field, and if I was Gavin, you know, you are still in a great position. You've been able to take down one Pokemon. You know, Arcanine isn't going to worry whether the Rain's up or not. Wave Crash is still going to hurt. But I think it might be critical just to give it the extra longevity against something like the Dragonite here. The one thing you've got to be careful of, though, as well, you don't necessarily want to set it up for a Dondozo in the back. Now, we know that there could only be Dondozo or Tatsugiri or the other remaining Pokemon on the in the back here.
Could be Iron Moth.
That was it, Iron Moth in the back. But, you know you're not going to have that confusion, as it were. So that's a sigh of relief that you can now breathe, but you have to make sure you have the pieces just in case that Dondozo comes through.
Absolutely. And just with a couple of switches around here, too, Gavin's definitely going to look to try to preserve some of these heavy hitters for later. Palafin did take an Intimidate drop, so may as well try to send in the Amoonguss instead. That you can see that Regenerator was so helpful to keep it healthy.
Yeah, really nice way of a little bit of HP recovery for the Amoonguss. You know, it has the berry as well, but the ability coming in clutch here. Iron Hands is going to switch in as well. We know it's burnt. It's going to be able to take the Extreme Sweep really well, but I think the critical thing is you can get a Fake Out and a Spore off in the next turn.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the burn here at this point really doesn't matter for the Iron Hands. It's all about the utility. Look how well the Iron Hands took those extreme speeds coming through from both of these Pokemon. And so, nice way to just go ahead and cycle through what we expect out of the Fake Out pressure.
Exactly, and sometimes those priority moves, they are great, you know, getting that little bit of damage, often getting the KO on a Pokemon, but by themselves, they're not necessarily the most heavy hitters. Yes, of course, Dragonite has the choice band, but often when we see Dragonite shine in this position, it's got that Terra normal on it as well. There is no terrestrialization available for Yuya at this point.
No, it's just going to be for Gavin Michaels if he decides to go for it at some point in this game, but Yuya's still going to be playing with this revolving door of Pokemon as we see the Dondozo. That's going to be the fourth and final. No Tatsugiri here either to be able to help it out as the Extreme Speed tries to finish off the Iron Hands but just can't do it.
Yeah, and the Spore's going to connect onto that Dragonite and put it to sleep as well. You know, interesting to see the Dondozo come back in action. It's still in a vulnerable position, however, because that Amoonguss can go for a Spore on the next turn.
It really can, and so at this point, yeah, you do have the availability of the leftovers to help out with a little bit of that HP recovery, but it's all about the Iron Hands here. You can just go for a Volt Switch if you like and try to get that pivot, but still, this Dondozo is just not looking too good in the face of even the Palafin, honestly.
I mean, the pivot would be nice because you have got both the Pelipper and the Palafin in the back as well. That's the whole kind of core synergy that you've just got set up ready to go towards the end game. And you might want to capitalize on the fact Dragonite is asleep at the same time. You can capitalize on the fact that it's not going to be dealing any damage. It's your prime opportunity to get some damage down on the opposing Dondozo. The Heavy Slam not doing too much to the Amoonguss. Volt Switch is going to come out, though. We are going to see a little ball position change from Gavin.
Yeah, and I think this board position is really nice because you could, at this point, bring in the Palafin if you like, the Pelipper to reset the Rain. There's a lot of different options here, but I like the Pelipper choice just to be able to make sure that the Rain is up.
Yeah, that's the thing, and you kind of think, you know, you don't necessarily want to boost up the Dondozo, but first of all, Dondozo's gone to sleep. And secondly, you're going to be going for Wave Crashes into two Water types and an Amoonguss Pokemon that it's not going to deal that much damage to, and particularly when it doesn't have the Commander boosted up, it's really not of a threat.
No, it's really not. I mean, at this point, like, he is trying everything in his power right now to be able to get through these powerhouse Pokemon that Gavin has brought. Rain is still a very dominant archetype right now, and we're about to still see even more power from it as... Do we see this Dragonite wake up at this point?
That's the thing. It has the chance to do so. Obviously, Dondozo is going to have to take a little bit of a rest. And, I mean, Amoonguss is now in a position where it's free to possibly... It could go for some more supportive options. You could always try and maybe Spore into the Dragonite just in case it wakes up, and that would give maybe your Palafin in the back a bit of longevity. But we are going to see the Terra Flying come out from the Pelipper here. This is going to boost up the Hurricanes that are going to be 100% accurate while the Rain is up. The Dragonite is still going to be taking a turn of sleep, so the Pelipper is free to just go for this beautiful Hurricane. Going to obviously get the boost from the Terra Flying as well, connect down and not quite get the KO, but that is a huge chunk of damage. Ooh. It gets the confusion though.
Okay, so there's a little bit that this Dragonite's going to be able to get through in order to make an attack, whether or not it wakes up and also whether or not it confuses itself. But this Amoonguss is going to just help out the Pelipper just in case it was going to be taking some damage from that Dragonite. And I love that strategy because you could bring yourself back up to full HP.
That's true, and I kind of like the way the Amoonguss has gone, you know, because you got tired of my scheming with Spore. I'm just going to switch onto the supportive role here and go for this Pollen Puff just in case my Pelipper friend needed a little bit of help. But this is really where Gavin's in the driving seat because he can afford to do that, right? Even if you don't take damage and Amoonguss technically has a wasted turn, it's still beneficial.
Yeah, it really is. And at this point, we're going to see the Dragonite wake up, but can it work through the confusion? Oh,
I mean, this is
hard to tell, but it
Oh.
will be able to use the extreme speed here, but just barely under half HP as a Pelipper is able to get the Hurricane.
Yeah, even so, that Focus Sash was giving Pelipper a lot of breathing room. And I was going to say, it's one of those things where you really don't want to hit yourself in confusion when you are running a choice band as well on your
Yes.
Pokemon. It's just really, really unfortunate. But you can see the benefits that Gavin is having with preserving this Pelipper in this game 2 as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just Spore there for coverage. Why not, just in case the Dondozo is going to wake up? But at this point, Yuya in this game, number 2 is down to his final 2 Pokemon. And that Arcanine has to come back out in the rain right now. Intimidate drop onto the Pelipper, not going to matter too much here. And it's stuck now, so you've got your Palafin and your Iron Hands in the back.
I mean, Arcanine has a few options. It could always go for the extreme speed into something like the Pelipper. You have to watch out for the Rage Powder, of course, redirecting away, although extreme speed I think will connect first anyway. But the key thing is you could also go for a Protect, maybe, you know, call that something's coming into the Arcanine like the Hurricane, and then maybe Dondozo wakes up, gets a KO. But I love the switches here from Gavin once again, just making sure Amoonguss is ready for the late game. You've got Iron Hands coming in. It really kind of was time for it to get the knockout. I think it's better to have the Amoonguss preserved in the back, and that really does show that, you know, the Pelipper's in such a strong position now.
It really is, and you can see the Pelipper just going for the Hurricane here. Any damage onto this Dondozo is going to stick, and that's a ton of damage. Even though the Dondozo is going to be able to wake up here, it does get a little bit of a boosted Wave Crash right now, so Pelipper will go take a nap as we see Gavin now come down to his final 2 Pokemon. Amoonguss, of course, getting a little bit of that HP healing back with the Regenerator, but the Palafin as well, still being able to hit its mark.
I think that Hurricane damage was huge, because you might look from Yuya's side and be like, hey, you just got a double KO. Things might look a little bit more dicey for Gavin. You're forced to bring in your Palafin and your Amoonguss now. Amoonguss has got a little bit more HP back from Regenerator, but the key thing here is this Palafin. It's in a position where it's going to be able to easily get a KO on that opposing Arcanine, and Amoonguss can possibly put, you know, that Dondozo right back to sleep. I don't think there's anything Dondozo's really got, you know, Wave Crash, Earthquake, Heavy Slam, that's going to be able to deal with Amoonguss, is going to be able to take one of those.
And this is a super safe turn here for Gavin. You don't want to open yourself up to the potential of your Amoonguss getting knocked out here, or maybe not being able to pick up the KO onto the Arcanine. So just going for this really classic, well, let me control the Dondozo again, and if you do decide to go for some spread damage, well, at least my Palafin is not going to be able to take any of that. And it also protects itself from a Will-O-Wisp.
I love this play here from Gavin, you know, protecting the Palafin, not being tempted just to go on the offensive while the rain's up. It actually was the double target here, but it allows the Amoonguss to deal with the opposing Pokemon here going for a Spore. You know, you can shut down the Dondozo or even the Arcanine, so you don't have to worry about the Will-O-Wisp going forward. But that said, now Dondozo's resting, Amoonguss can go for that Rage Powder, draw in the, you know, Will-O-Wisp here, and then Palafin's going to have a happy time. Although, actually, their Arcanine is rocking safety goggles. You know, excuse me, I can't see it on the screen itself. You know, it's not actually rocking some shades. But that means that it won't actually won't be able to draw in that Will-O-Wisp. So Palafin is actually a little bit more exposed than I thought.
Yeah, it really is. And especially now that the rain is gone as well, you see the extreme speed, though, is still not going to be enough to deal with that bulk that Palafin gets from going into its hero form. And the Jet Punch knocking out the Arcanine here is just one more Pokemon that stands in Gavin's way to move forward to the finals.
Yeah, Will-O-Wisp not being the move choice there, instead going for the extreme speed wasn't enough to get the KO, so Jet Punch easily able, or Wave Crash able to get that KO, and you can see Palafin just getting healed up by the Amoonguss a little bit more. Gavin, you could see celebrating that moment, because I think he sees the path to victory here.
I think so, and what a hard-fought battle here for Yuya, just already in a very difficult matchup for him, still being able to make it look competitive, and with that forfeit, Gavin Michaels moves on